With the war drums growing louder in the standoff with Iran, President Trump's Board of Peace convenes in the Middle East.
So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
I'm Daily Wire Executive Editor John Bickley with Georgia Howe. It's Friday, February 20th. This is Morning Wire.
The British Crown responds after the arrest of former Prince Andrew over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
And it may be the downfall of the Labour government, just as this may be the ending for King Charles's reign as well.
And nearly 3 weeks since the disappearance of Nancie Guthrie, officials and the family are still searching for answers.
To whoever has her or knows where she is, it is never too late.
Thanks for waking up with Morning Wire. Stay tuned. We have the news you need to know.
This episode is sponsored by Brickhouse Nutrition. You've probably heard about those weight loss injections that everyone's been talking about, and for good reason. The results can be pretty incredible. They work by helping regulate blood sugar and keeping your appetite in check. But here's the thing, not everyone wants to deal with weekly injections, especially when you start hearing about some of the side effects that can come with them. That's where Lean comes in. It's a weight loss supplement developed by doctors, and people are seeing some really impressive results. The ingredients in Lean are backed by research showing that they can help lower blood sugar, turn stored fat into energy, and reduce those constant cravings that make dieting so hard. This stuff is no joke. I am one of those people that eats sometimes a lot when I'm stressed. But once Lean came into the picture, I was able to rein in my cravings. Let's get you started with 20% off and free rush shipping so you can add Lean to your healthy diet and exercise plan. Visit takelean.com and enter WIRE for your discount. That's promo code WIRE at takelean.com today.
As the U.S. military buildup in the Middle East continues, President Trump offered new threats to Iran on Thursday as the world holds its breath.
Daily Wire senior editor Cabot Phillips is here with the latest. Hey, Cabot. So tensions remain high in the Middle East. President Trump gave us some insights yesterday into the situation. Where do things stand now?
So nuclear talks, both formal and informal with Iran, have continued to stall this week, with the Trump administration reportedly furious over the regime's refusal to give in on a number of key points, mainly the dismantling of their uranium enrichment facilities. On Tuesday, the regime asked for 2 weeks to come up with a new proposal, but the growing sense in Washington is that they are simply stalling right now, trying to buy time for a potential nuclear breakthrough of their own, and also simultaneously prepare for an armed conflict with the U.S. if it comes to that. President Trump spoke on this topic yesterday during a gathering of the Board of Peace.
We do have some work to do with Iran. They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. You can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon. They've been told that very strongly.
And while President Trump has said that he, would prefer diplomacy, his actions say that the time for negotiating could be over. Over the last 24 hours, the historic military buildup in the Middle East has only continued, with a steady stream of tankers, warships, fighters, anything you can imagine arriving by the hour. Now, President Trump has been, uncharacteristically tight-lipped about his ideas and plans for Iran. But on Thursday, he did offer a clear threat to the Ayatollah during that address.
They cannot continue to threaten the stability of the entire region, and they must make a deal. Or if that doesn't happen, I maybe can understand. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But bad things will happen if it doesn't.
And then in a really remarkable move, he appeared to offer the Ayatollah a deadline. Have a listen.
We may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
And even though he gave a deadline there, keep in mind, back in June, the White House gave Iran 2 weeks to make an amended offer during nuclear talks. But then just days later, Trump launched Operation Midnight Hammer with those bombing raids. So that timeline, not exactly concrete. Numerous reports now say that Trump came close to greenlighting a strike on Iran back in January. That was after the regime killed thousands of protesters. But ultimately, at the last minute, he ruled it out, wanting to have more options at his disposal. Well, as this massive military buildup continues, he's got plenty of options now.
Indeed, as you said, a historic buildup of military forces in the region. What would a military strike look like?
Yeah, this is important. So with all this talk of military action, I think a lot of Americans are probably assuming this would look like the Maduro capture or the 12-day conflict this past summer. Those were precision operations that were highly targeted at specific installations or individuals. But from everything we're hearing from the administration, this would be much, much broader in scale. If Trump gives the green light, we're talking about what would likely be the largest U.S. military operation since Iraq and Afghanistan. And that means the potential for a much more serious response. Following those strikes back in June, the Iranians offered a response, but it was very restrained. It was more of a symbolic response than a serious strike. They targeted an American base in Qatar, but actually went as far as giving the U.S. advance warning before those strikes were launched. So most of the missiles were shot down and no casualties were reported. It was basically just a face-saving measure by the Ayatollah. But if these strikes were to threaten the very standing of the regime, the expectation is that he would order a much more serious response this go-round and would target any number of U.S. military bases in the Middle East. Now, if those strikes were successful and, killed Americans, it would make it much, much harder for Trump to avoid putting boots on the ground. Now, the president has been famously insistent that he does not want the U.S. embroiled in another long, drawn-out conflict without a clear objective. So obviously, this operation would be fraught with risk.
Right, including the political risk of starting a war here. Cabot, thanks so much for reporting.
Absolutely.
Religious freedom is a cornerstone of our nation, and Alliance Defending Freedom is committed to protecting it, including by making sure that Christian organizations are free to live out their faith. But right now, Chicago Public Schools is discriminating against the private Christian college, Moody Bible Institute, because it only hires people who share its biblical beliefs. The school district is blocking Moody's elementary education students from participating in Chicago's student teaching program. In other words, Chicago Public Schools is punishing Moody students for attending a college that practices its faith. Our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom are representing Moody Bible Institute in a lawsuit to challenge this discrimination. But legal battles like this come with real costs. You can stand with Moody by signing a statement of support right now. Visit joinadf.com/wire or text WIRE to 83848 to sign the statement of support for Moody Bible Institute. That's joinadf.com/wire or text WIRE to 83848 to voice your support for religious freedom.
British police arrested former Prince Andrew on Thursday in connection to his contact with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And Andrew's brother, King Charles, has responded.
Joining us to discuss is Hilary Fordwich, British royals expert and business keynote speaker. Hilary, great to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So yesterday's arrest wasn't totally unexpected, but it still sent shockwaves throughout the UK. First, what took place and what are the charges?
Yes. Well, this was the Thames Valley Police that is based down, obviously, Windsor is in the Thames Valley. And they drove all the way up many hours to Norfolk Sandringham, where they arrested former Prince Andrew, now known as Andrew Windsor Mountbatten, on his birthday, his 66th birthday. He has been released. We don't know yet whether it's on bail, his own reconnaissance or what, but he was released. We also know that he has had his home searched by the police. This is due, ironically, obviously there's all the debauchery from the photographs we've seen. He's always claimed his innocence, but this is due to the misuse in public office of information, misuse of information as a trade envoy, passing secrets and trade private issues onto Jeffrey Epstein. So he betrayed his mother, his entire family, the royal family, and his nation.
Speaking of the royal family, we did hear from Andrew's brother, King Charles, yesterday. How is he and the royal family responding?
Well, I always say better late than never. As you might recall at the passing of Princess Diana, when the Queen was up at Balmoral and when she finally came down to the capital and she was at Buckingham Palace to address the nation. And that really did put things back on track. Always better late than never, as I say, because King Charles has now made a public statement saying that we are wholeheartedly, without a shred of a doubt, supporting the police in this investigation. What's really interesting about the statement was what it didn't say. It didn't say my brother, Prince Andrew, or Andrew, or Andrew, a member of our family. It just said Andrew Windsor Mountbatten. And the royal family in entirety is really distancing themselves. I would say that Prince William is the force behind a lot of this. From the outset, he has had zero tolerance for any of this debauchery or deviant behavior. And as a former FBI a friend of mine who's a former FBI said to me, Hilary, anyone with this sort of deviant behavior, as in the photographs of him with those young women, they're in debauchery. There are other aspects of this life where they go into these sort of deviant issues of behavior. And that's what we're seeing from these revelations. And I would say what's the most important about all of this, this is an existential threat to the monarchy itself. And that's another reason, and probably the main reason actually, why you're seeing Prince William and the King distance themselves from Prince Andrew, siding with the police, being as public as they can finally now, because this issue is about who knew what when. And it might result in King Charles having to abdicate, although it will be to do with his health and other reasons, because this is a ghastly reflection on the royal family. And Prince William wants none of it. He wanted his wayward uncle ousted from Royal Lodge on the Windsor estate because he and his family were moving there and he wanted to be as far away from him as possible, hence him being ousted in the middle of the night and kicked out to Sandringham Estate, which is up in Norfolk, many hours away.
So it sounds like you expect very serious sentencing here for Andrew.
I believe so, particularly because what I understand, and many people I believe are privy to this too, that with regard to the information that's been revealed to date, if you were to lay pieces of paper on the ground, it basically amounts to 2 times the size of the Eiffel Tower, 2 Eiffel Towers of information still to be revealed. So goodness gracious, goodness knows what's going to be in that in terms of more ghastly revelations of which he's been part of.
Well, as you've said here, the stakes are as high as they get. It's really remarkable to watch this all unfold. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's day 20 in the search for Nancie Guthrie, and it seems the case is now hinging on DNA evidence.
Daily Wire reporter Lyndon Blake is here to break it down for us. So, Lyndon, where are we in this investigation? What's the latest?
Yeah, so far right now in regards to DNA, we're kind of in a waiting game because the DNA that was found on the glove that was a couple of miles from Nancie's home didn't have a match in the FBI CODIS database. So now they're doing a genealogy trail really on that DNA. Now, I want everyone to keep in mind that this could be a random person's DNA, that this has not been linked back to the crime scene in any way. So it just could be a complete miss altogether. But I think the interesting thing that they're still working on right now are the DNA tests from inside the home. We know that that is being processed. And the person that was on Nancie's front doorsteps, the terrifying masked man, we know he was in the house for 41 minutes. So you have to assume that there was some finagling with, doorknobs and light switches and other things inside the house that they're looking for that touch DNA, any type of fingerprints or any type of skin cells, hair that would have been shed to test for that. So that's the evidence that we're still waiting on right now. No word we're going to get that back. As far as the glove DNA that's going down the genealogy tracing, that could take anywhere from a few hours up to a couple of weeks. In some cases, it's taken years, but an expert said because of the attention that's on this case, and if this person has deep roots in the U.S., it'll go quicker than that.
So is DNA all they have to go on right now? Are there any other good leads?
Yeah, so right now we know that there was that camera taken from Nancie's rooftop the Friday after the search started, that first Friday at this point now of the search. And Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos told a news outlet this week that that is now in the hands of Google. And we know that Google was the company that was able to extract that video that was deleted from Nancie's doorbell's Nest camera. So right now, what you have to assume is Google has that camera from the ceiling, from the roof rather, of her house, and they're trying to go find deleted video that has been traced over from that night. And that's very technical. You kind of have to be gentle with it when you're trying to extract the video so you don't delete something else that you might need. So that's what's happening right now, and ultimately could be a big lead if that camera was able to pick up some type of vehicle or more people that were involved from that night that Nancie disappeared.
Now, the problem there is that she didn't have the subscription service that would be saving those videos. They kind of auto-delete, and they need to retrieve them somehow.
Yes, so that's the case. If you have the subscription service, it'll save on your server, but because she didn't, now they're having to go back into the deleted files of it all and try to just extract that video like they did the doorbell camera video. But Pima County Sheriff said that they're not withholding anything right now, that Google has the other cameras and they're working towards finding something.
Now, just to circle back, we have seen several homes and vehicles searched in this case so far. none of that was fruitful?
Yeah, nothing came of that. No arrest came of that. There was that person that was detained in Rio Rico. There was another person and a woman that were detained last Friday in a major SWAT operation, it looked like, but no arrest came from that. Cars were towed during that one. Nothing came of that either. Pima County Sheriff said that those individuals who have been detained are cleared up into a point. That's kind of a vague statement, but right now it seems that the people that were detained are speaking out saying they have nothing to do with this and they want their names cleared.
Now, what about the family? Have they put out any more videos?
Not since Savannah's last video where she was just pleading with whoever has her mom to bring their mom back. And we haven't heard from the siblings since more than a week ago when they released a video with Savannah. But right now we know that people on the Today Show, they're wearing these yellow ribbons to show their support for their coworker. They said that yellow is a symbol of hope.
Well, closing in on 3 weeks this weekend. Lyndon, thanks for reporting.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for waking up with us. And if you're listening to the show, you can now watch the show free on Daily Wire Plus. We'll be back this evening with more news you need to know.